Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream Podcast. I'm your host, Vince Nero. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking with Mark Webster, co-founder over at Authority Hacker. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Vince. Thanks so much for having me. Very good to be here. Doing good.
Yeah, great, man. Yeah, you're kind of on the other side. I know you guys have a very successful podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to chat here. I know a lot's been going on in your world. A lot's been going on in the Google world. And so kind of my thought, I think, with this conversation today, Mark, is Google's been changing. Like I said, the past year has been pretty wild, and Authority Hacker has changed with it. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about kind of the change and the impetus to that. But you guys have really leaned into AI workflows. And I was hoping today we could talk about how our listeners, the link builders, the digital PRs could leverage some of the learnings that you have. But before I do, I just want to remind everybody and subscribe, leave a comment, engage with this stuff, share it with your colleagues. The more you do that, the more we can have great guests on like Mark. Thanks. All right.
Yeah.
Mark, let's get into this, man. So it might be good to give people who are unfamiliar with Authority Hacker what it was and what it is now.
Yeah. So I guess Authority Hacker started in 2014. My business partner, Gail, and we've been working together for 4 or 5 years before that. We used to have an SEO agency together. And I think at its core, we just really love building systems and like figuring out marketing type problems. So Authority Hacker started as a blog, just a simple place for us to share the tactics that we had developed. And very quickly, it grew. A lot of people got interested in that, wanted more. We started our podcast in 2016. I think we're up to 360 something episodes of that now. We were on YouTube. We grew our blog massively, our email subscribers. We had a big community, which it ended up mostly focusing on niche site builders, authority site builders, which was booming from sort of 2014 to late 2023. And then the infamous helpful content updates, which wasn't so helpful for so many of us, came along. This was a big Google algorithm update that completely upended the search results for most of the keywords which affiliate and blog type sites were trying to rank for. And basically said, if you're an affiliate site, then 99% of you cannot rank for any of this anymore. And yeah, just everybody's businesses, like it wasn't overnight. It was death by 1,000 cuts for some people. But yeah, I would not recommend starting an affiliate site. And there's very few people still remaining in that industry. Obviously for us, which was the core of our business at the time, that was a big problem. So we had to switch and pivot to something else. And we had been working with AI for a number of years, actually, since before ChatGPT. We were playing around with GPT-2 it was called conversion.ai in the beginning. Later became Jasper, I think was the name of it, which also I think they got wiped out more or less by ChatGPT. But even in the early days, it was a bit rough around the edges, but we could see the promise in that. It's like, when this gets good, this is gonna be a game changer. And ChatGPT comes out. And then honestly, in the beginning, it was if you wanted to just spam a bunch of articles, amazing. But we had really high sort of quality thresholds for the work that we do. And so it wasn't really quite there yet. It wasn't really until a little while later when Anthropic, which is another AI company, released Claude. I think it was Claude 3.5 or 3, can't remember. It was the first one that was really good for kind of writing essentially full article. And then from that point on, we started using it a lot to do a lot of our sales copy, our email copy. We ran 2 6-figure product launches, which was all of the sales pages, all of the email copy, all of the ads were 100% created using AI. And so we kind of saw the power of it and what it could do for a business. But even at the time, we were like in the wrong industry, so to speak, because everything was declining and Google was just like cutting everyone's traffic. So we're like, we really like doing this stuff. I think we can do it well, but we wasn't really the right time or the right industry to be doing it in. So yeah, when it fell apart and we were like, actually, we have nothing left anymore. We need to essentially build something from scratch again. We're like, let's just go all in on AI. Honestly, it's where the wind is blowing. Like over the next 5-10 years, it's already is changing the world. And I think we're just at the start of that. So that's why it's super exciting for us.
Yeah, it was funny. We were at Brighton SEO last week, and we have our kind of AI powered tool, List IQ, that we're in beta right now. We had a big sign that said AI powered, and you could see people coming up to it and just being like, what's this AI? Like how that's I don't call it like the hot word to use, the
Flavor of the
terminology,
month.
but
It,
essentially, as I talk to people, they were like, I'm here to just see what people are doing with AI at this point.
and that's the thing though. It's so hard to keep up with it. We literally spend all week, every week trying to keep up with it and trying to learn and practice this and do things and build things for people. But even for us, full time on this, it's just really difficult to keep up. There's new stuff happening all the time and it's moving so quickly. So as a business owner, when you have other stuff to worry about, you just don't have time really to keep track of everything. And that's why, unfortunately, I think there's quite a lot of people starting to fall behind.
Yeah, which is a great opportunity to repitch. Definitely check out what Mark and Gail are doing. Check out their YouTube channel. They're putting out great stuff to, like you said, Mark, keep you up to date, because that is my concern, I think, as an SEO. Like I write, aside from doing this kind of stuff, but like I'm writing the content, I'm creating everything for BuzzStream, but I come at this from a very kind of traditional SEO background too. So I am hesitant to make any big moves because I know the needle is constantly moving. You can say that with on the Google side of things, like just for search in general, like Google is changing the algorithm seemingly weekly and it's causing all these massive fluctuations. But to have somebody tell me, yeah, we figured out how to rank on in AI overviews or ChatGPT or something, I just don't buy that that's a scalable, repeatable process day
Me
in and day
neither.
out.
The thing is, as you highlighted with the Brighton SEO thing, if you say AI powered or just put the words AI anywhere on your product, service, video, message, email, YouTube video, whatever, it gets more clicks and it gets more interest because it's flavor of the month right now. So the unfortunate downside of that is everybody is saying everything is AI powered or trying to twist their video or bring in AI into it in some way. And there's just so much noise about, and like, you don't know what to believe. And I think it's a really good example of like how to rank in AI overviews. I've seen a lot of people talk about this and it gets a lot of attention. I think people talk about it because it gets a lot of attention rather than because they've really figured it out to the anywhere close to how SEO was more or less figured out roughly what you needed to do, at least. I'm super skeptical of this stuff as well.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think the only thing that I've really seen at this point that I at least feel comfortable with, which is already outdated, is Ziff Davis did a study that talked about how at the early data sets, like back when these companies were more transparent about how they're building their tools, they were releasing some of the earlier data sets. And Ziff Davis did this study that looked at how they were curating the information. And they were using a lot of high DA news publications to curate and clean up the data that they were then using to train the LLMs. Outside of that, it's then you have to take a couple extra steps, like logical leaps, where it's okay. So then therefore, if you could get into those high DA publications, maybe you're more likely going to get referenced. But again, like that's an obvious step, but we don't know that.
It's also not very practical. It's, oh yeah, I'll just go to all the high DA publications and get mentioned there. That's a button you can press. It's really difficult to do that.
Yeah. And that's probably a good segue, Mark. So I think before you guys made the transition, this was maybe the end of last year and into some of the podcasts you were doing this year, I noticed you guys did lean a little bit into digital PR, and it seemed like there were some tactics that were really working for you guys. Do you think, based off of what you know, do you feel like digital PR and let's say link building in general is still an essential strategy for SEOs?
Absolutely. If you're doing SEO, then yes. When we even came out, SEO is dead, but like that was more to get attention than anything else. It's like SEO is not dead. Affiliate SEO is absolutely dead for 99% of sites, 99% of businesses, mostly smaller ones out there. But if you have a real business, an e-com store, an agency, a product, a service, a local business, SEO is alive and kicking. Like it still works. And if anything, you could argue the link building is more important than ever because content itself is essentially becoming commoditized because AI content is so good and everybody can generate very good content at the click of a button now. So what is the differentiating factor in SEO? It falls back to links, authority, mentions on high DR sites, which usually links as well. Yeah, I think it's as important as it has ever been. It's just not everybody is still doing SEO, at least from our old world.
Let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty stuff here. So you guys have been working in AI, developing workflows. You're in and day out. Mark, for listeners, before we started this call, Mark was seemingly heads down in some working with AI and getting frustrated. It's like I say, it could be like working with a freelancer sometimes, or like a brand new employee who maybe didn't get enough sleep last night.
I think everyone's had that experience of hiring someone and you have to really hold their hand and tell them, do this, then do this. And at some point you kind of hope that they have some common sense and that just takes over and they do it. And more often than not, that is the case. But sometimes with AI, for whatever reason, it doesn't really get what you're trying to do. It's more predicting what the next word it should say is. And it's very good at that. But if you forget to state something which you think is common sense or is very obvious, then yeah, you're going to have problems. And it's so frustrating sometimes communicating with AI because it feels like you're working with a child sometimes. But then on the other end, like what you can do with it when you do get it working, and usually there's a way around it to get it working, is just incredible.
Yeah. I want to start with kind of digital PR stuff, because that's where I personally see the industry going, and where you can get the most value out of building links, and where your money should be going is building this brand authority and all that good stuff. Do you have any recommended workflows for digital PRs through utilizing AI?
To be honest with you, the approach that we did the most with digital PR, and we've ran maybe a couple dozen campaigns, was to use some kind of data set or survey. Now, when you're creating your own, if you have an audience that you can create your own data with, so, like a big email list, I think it's a really good idea to run your own survey. It's like very difficult for other people to build up that kind of data. We did that a few times with the Authority Hacker audience to great success. And we ended up building a number of survey pieces. That wasn't really quite so much for digital PR. That was more to kind of rank for the survey and statistics keywords, which we can talk about as well. But in terms of passive links, that's best bang for your buck link building tactic on the planet by a country mile, as we say in the UK. In terms of digital PR specifically, though, I think what's been interesting that I haven't done, but I've seen, has been creative content. So things like maps and infographics and interactive content, and anything where it's like the visualization and the display and the interactivity is the nice thing. You may be taking some data that's already out there or some information that's already out there. I saw one recently that was, I forget the dementia, right? When you forget a lot of things.
Yep.
So someone created a piece where it showed you like a room, and then there was like a slider, and then it was like things missing from the room. And
Yeah,
it was like,
it was Root Digital. Yeah, Darren Kingman. I think that's you're talking about. Yeah, I forget the site they were doing it for, but that was
I forget the site as well, but it just stood out to me because it was a really cool use of the interactivity there. And so those types of things I really like, but it's a little bit challenging to pull that off if you're running your own business or even going through an agency. Like those campaigns are expensive to do because you need a lot of custom dev work and that kind of thing. So that was a barrier. Nowadays, though, the doing custom dev work and building this kind of stuff is becoming more and more trivial because you can do it all in AI now. Gail, my business partner, always says the highest value words that AI can create is code. And because all of these LLM companies are essentially heavily invested in having AI generate amazing code, like they've really pushed it to do that because it saves them money and they can do more in the long run. So using AI models to create these kind of interactive elements is honestly, it's trivial. You can use something like Windsurf or Lovable. There's a couple apps you can use, and they have free tiers that you can work with as well to build this. And the sky is the limit, really. It's just, you need to tell it exactly what it needs to do in plain English. And in digital PR, if you're struggling for an idea, it's take something that someone has done in their industry and then apply it to your industry. So is there a before and after thing you could do with interactive sliders if you're a wedding photographer, how it usually looks, how I make it look, or something like that. So that would be something I would be exploring a lot right now, because I think there's still not too many people are doing that in a digital PR space. Whereas things like case studies, data sets, and scraping, very interesting. I think most people are already using AI to process that data, to pull out insights and to write content around that. So really, in order to be unique, having access to unique data is interesting. And there's a site here in the UK, I don't know if there's one in the US, but it's called whatdotheyknow.com. And this is a place where you can submit like a freedom of information request to any agency, government agency, department that's signed up to this and ask for data from them. And it's free to do it. And the cool thing about it as well is you can go and see all of the requests that other people have made. So you can then get ideas for other pieces of information that you can request to build stories on as well. The game, I think, in digital PR now is about how can you be more unique or stand out more from other people. And yeah, everyone's able to create like some kind of basic analysis or basic data post using AI now, but it's knowing what to build is the interesting thing. So I guess, again, like looking at the bigger agencies, the bigger companies who are doing a lot of digital PR and like reverse engineering what they're doing, applying that to their niche, like these are the kind of things I would be focusing on right now.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's an amazing brainstorm buddy for that kind of stuff too. You could, like you said, just feed it something and say, give me some versions that I could apply this to my website or my client or whatever. You said a couple things in there, Mark, and I want to maybe throw some disclaimers here because I feel like I've heard this and I've tried this myself and questionable results, but using it to code, what are some potential pitfalls in, I think, AI in general? We talked about, you mentioned this earlier, it's a predictive model, right? Like people treat it like it's a person. It's not. Like you shouldn't treat it like that. Although it's easy to anthropomorphize this kind of stuff, knowing what it does and how it works, I think can help you understand the limitations. So maybe, yeah, what are some pitfalls of using it in this way for a digital PR, let's say?
The thing with digital PR is if you're using it to code something interactive, some visual thing, a map or some kind of graphical thing, there's not really too many pitfalls because most of the real problems that you're likely to have when you're coding something with digital PR is around things like security and account vulnerabilities and all of the stuff which most coders would know. And if a non-coder such as myself built it, we wouldn't know that there was a vulnerability there. But you're not really, with digital PR, you're not really having people sign up, or it's really just to create that piece of content and share on your website. There's not really anything to hack in that way. So I feel like it's really about as low risk as you're ever going to get. And anybody with a website faces hacking vulnerabilities, and yet almost all of us are able to stay on top of that. So I don't really see it as too much of a challenge here for in this specific context. Now, if you start going on to build custom apps and things like that, then yeah, okay, there's more issues there. But honestly, at the scale most people are going to be working on this, I don't think you're going to be pinning too much of a target on your head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great points for sure. Okay, look, you mentioned the kind of passive links, like kind of statistics types posts. That's something that I think, what's funny, I remember when I was at Siege Media, like coming into this, like falling backwards into it, like realizing we have all these link goals we're trying to hit for people, but this one post just keeps seeming to get links where I don't have to do outreach. And I think at one point Siege even made a pivot away from doing outreach because they were able to get so much out of this. I think they've since gone back a bit to jumpstart a lot of these. And that's something that I think you guys have talked about in your passive link building. Like it does need a little boost to start, get the flywheel going. But let's talk a little bit about this because you mentioned how using this kind of data-led passive link building approach seems to be the best for link builders right now, the best bang for your buck, I think is how you put it. Do you have any AI workflows for that type of content?
Yeah, so let me just briefly explain what this is and how we've done it in the past, and then we can dive into the process a bit more. But essentially, when someone Googles AI statistics, let's say, maybe 9 times out of 10, it's a writer or a journalist who's writing a story that needs a statistic to back up something they're writing. So the majority of people who are searching, the majority of the search volume for that keyword is people that are likely to link to you, which is really key here. So if you are able to rank, let's say number one for AI statistics, as we did for several years, you're able to pick up literally thousands of links from top tier publications around the world. And we had the exact same problem. We were trying to build 30 links per month with outreach. And it was difficult because we weren't paying for links and stuff at the time. And then it was so much work and so much effort. We're like, why are we doing this? We're never going to get to 300 links per month. We're never going to 10x this. Like, what do we need to do to 10x this? And so that's when we came across survey and statistics post. It was actually a podcast I did with Stacey McNaught. She has an agency here in the UK as well. And she put me onto this tactic.
Nice.
And we explored it from there. But essentially, you need to rank at the top, page one at least, if not number one for X statistics. Now, the way to do that is to have the best statistics post on the internet. And if you can give it a bit of boost with some links from some other places, some internal links and things like maybe an outreach campaign to get it kickstarted, as we said, then great. But the number one differentiator with a statistics post is having unique data for it. Because there are plenty of people out there that will just do a roundup, use AI to do that of all of the other statistics on the internet and make a slightly longer list. But that doesn't really cut it. If you're in a competitive space, you need some kind of unique data. So that's when we did our own surveys. You can use a tool like pollfish.com. It's about $1 per respondent to build your own surveys there and get some unique data. You can also pay using Google Ads, by the way, to rank at the top. Now, I haven't done it enough to say whether it's worth it. If links are very valuable to you, and especially if you're already paying hundreds of dollars a link to an agency, then it's probably something you want to explore, at least in the beginning, to maybe validate if it's worth then putting all the effort to try and rank organically for it as well. But yeah, if you're able to do all that, then it's really just about running a simple outreach campaign for it. Our favorite subject line there was missing stat in your article, because everybody's going to open that. And then it's just, oh yeah, I noticed you had a missing stat in your article about X. And then we had one of our stats in there. The prospecting was also categorized by kind of like subtopic. And then we would put an image of the survey result, the pie chart, just add a bit of legitimacy to it. And we got so many links from that. If you're someone who's been doing a lot of guest posting outreach and banging your head against the wall with everyone asking for money and just not responding, this was like swimming downstream again, finally, after years of trying to swim up the river. Yeah, it's been great. Done this, I think 3 or 4 times, and we've built several thousand links to our site. And this, in fact, the majority of our sites to Authority Hacker have been built now through these 3 or 4 posts. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, there's definitely, I think, some nuances. I did a deep dive blog post recently, and I think the one thing that people are pushing back on this, but I always recommended, there are certain thresholds, like you can't be a brand new site to do this most of the time. I think it really is industry dependent. But yeah, that's where I think some people get hung up. They're like, oh, I'll just do a statistics post, and you're a brand new site, and you're
and as always, when you're trying to rank, it's a zero-sum game. There are 10 slots or mostly 10 slots on page one. So you got to stand a chance in being there. To give the example of the AI statistics keyword, we were being Forbes.com, which is DR90, what are they, 495 site for years. But we were DR78 ourselves. So I don't think if we had the same content and we were DR0, we would have ranked. So yeah, there's something in there.
Yeah. Thanks for laying out that strategy. I think for listeners, was that something that you had any AI help with?
So at the time, not really. The only AI help we had was in organizing the data. When we were creating the survey post, we pulled all the statistics in. Sorry, when we were creating the statistics post, we pulled all the statistics that we could find from other people. And we used AI to make sure there were no duplicates and rewrite things. So very basic stuff. But I think where AI is starting to become a real game changer in link building is in the kind of the end-to-end automation that you can do with it now. So I'll give you an example. Like think of a basic guest post. In order to send that, you need to do some kind of prospecting. Maybe you'll be scraping Google or looking at sites ranking in Google for specific keywords, or using a tool like Ahrefs to find prospects that are linking to someone else. You're taking that data, you're putting it into a Google Sheet, you're maybe manipulating it in some ways, doing tasks like deduplicating it to make sure don't have the same website twice. Once you have the list of prospects, you then need to find contact information. So you may use there are many email finding tools out there. Hunter.io is the one we used for a long time in order to find contact information. But even then, you need to pick which person at the company you're going to contact. Is it the co-founder, the head of marketing, the editor? And there's all these kind of like decisions that you're making along the way, but it's the same decision you're making for every prospect, more or less. So that actually creates a really interesting opportunity to automate this using AI and using some automation systems. So I think most people will probably be familiar with Zapier. It's like a tool that you can connect different apps, different tools together and do things. Make.com is another one. It does more or less the same thing. It's a little bit more complex and you can do more things in there. And N8N is another one which a lot of people in the AI space these days are using. Reason being is you can self-host it and it's more or less free to do this. Whereas Zapier, it's very expensive. Every Zap, I don't know, it's like $1 or something now. It's crazy. So N8N is great and you can plug it in to something called API-Fi or Appify. I'm never quite sure how to pronounce that. Which is a platform where people have built something called actors, which are essentially scrapers. So any kind of scraping operation that you would ever do in your prospecting for link building, someone has more than likely built an Appify actor that does this, and it's very cheap to do. You could scrape Google, you can scrape LinkedIn, you can scrape even like YouTube comments in places if you want, or you can connect it to other databases like Apollo and you can scrape there and you can pull out thousands of prospects in a few minutes for $20, which is incredible. And you can also set it to do this every day. So you can let's scrape LinkedIn every day or scrape Google once a month and look for new sites and for whatever keywords and add them. Then you can have it add it to your sheet, check if you've reached out to it before. You can find contact information, can connect to Hunter.io and other places. And you basically, your entire workflow, which in the past, someone or a team of people would do manually, you can now do all of that automatically using AI. And that's not even to mention when it comes to writing out emails to prospects, because for the longest time, we had this world where there was like shotgun style outreach where you would have one template, you just blast out to as many people as you can, and the template didn't change. And then you had the kind of snipery targeted approach where you spend sometimes 5-10 minutes researching and writing a custom email to every prospect. You obviously got a much higher response rate. You're able to send far fewer of them. You can do both now with AI. Which is pretty wild. So being able to send personalized outreach at scale to thousands of people per day, it's a complete game changer when it comes to cold outreach. And at the moment, we're doing this for cold outreach to actually sell something. So we're working with a recruitment agency to pitch their services and book calls using this approach. But the exact same thing works for link building now. So yeah, it's really exciting times. And it's really, we're at the forefront of some big changes in that space. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, that does all sound really exciting. I think almost overwhelming to a point where it's like you don't know what or where to get started. I think that might be.
I think a lot of people have this problem with getting started because, and as a perfectionist myself, I really thinking of like, how do I build this mega system I'm going to press a button and it's just going to get me links. That's the wrong way to approach it when you're getting started. Just pick one small part of a process that you do that you repeat and try and automate that. And the best thing in the world now is you can use AI, just ask it, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I automate this with make.com, with N8N? And it will tell you, it will give you a good explanation to it. It's gotten to the stage now where people even have built Chrome extensions, which you can then load when you're working in N8N. And it has all this kind of reference material from the N8N support pages and instructions for how to use it. So you can ask it a question and it tells you exactly what you need to do within your workflow. So there's no excuse now if you don't know how to do something. You just work with AI and it will handhold you all the way. That's how we've learned everything.
Yeah, same. It's definitely, I now just have ChatGPT open all the time and I just bounce questions off of it. I have it do math equations. I have research for how can I do this study? What are some resources and all that kind of stuff. In fact, we just published this link building trends report we did with Citation Labs. I had ChatGPT help with all the data analysis. I wrote it, but then for the coding, like we already had our state of digital PR kind of thing, like an interactive, it's different than our blog layout. It's nicer. I had our developer do it and spend the time. So instead of having him need to custom code this out again, I asked ChatGPT, can you use this same exact style and put this new text into this? And my dev time, our dev person's time on this went from a couple of days to a couple of hours, where he was just trimming up the edges and customizing a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff, like you said, picking off a small piece, I think, is probably a little more digestible. And again, don't be afraid to ask the platforms you're using for help, because they are really good at that, is what I've seen as well.
I think
Go
as
ahead.
well, just one other thing to add is if you're working in a team, quite often you have people who are responsible for specific parts of the process, and they're doing the same thing over and over again every day. So when we had a team of people building links, we would quite often build just internal tools that they would use to speed up what they're doing or to automate certain things. This is 2014, 2015, 2016, so way before AI was a thing. And we would pay sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to a development agency to help build us this tool. And now that is completely trivial to do that. It's, you go to ChatGPT, you say, hey, I need to build this tool. Here's the input. Here's what I'd like it to do. And here's an example of what the output should look like. And you have your tool. It's built. Like it'll be done in a few minutes. So yeah, like that is another interesting place you can start with if you're doing a lot of this stuff at scale, is just custom coding internal tools. And again, when you're doing it internally, there's much less that can go wrong because no one else is going to be using it. Yeah, like there's less risk there.
Yeah, for sure. This all got me thinking, Mark. I want to end here, hopefully on a positive note, but it's a more philosophical question, I think, for you. So as you get into this, all reminds me of this one book I read a long time ago by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat, right? And it's this idea that with these technological advancements, things become more globalized. Also, the playing field is a little more leveled, right? So what you end up with, I think, in these cases are a lot more noise, at least in this stage. Like we are, like you said, like you can do a lot more, a lot quicker and easier. It offers the question of, if everyone can do it, we're just going to, it sounds like it's going to be adding a lot more noise. So how do you use this stuff to then differentiate yourself? If you're just automating everything, like your competitors can do the same. So what's the mindset? Where do you think this is going for this kind of stuff?
I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed by this is changing so fast and get into a bit of a nihilistic view of what's going on here. If you look into the past, when big technological changes come along, how many telephone operators did we have 50 years ago plugging cables out and connecting calls, right? That job does not exist anymore. Like barring maybe a few like high profile executives have their assistant or their secretary set up a phone call with the president or whoever it is, someone else important. Almost nobody uses this job role anymore. Yet everybody has jobs and there's no labor, not really a shortage of jobs right now. It's a shortage of labor, if anything else. So what it means, and you're absolutely right, it levels the playing field, and anybody can build an app. Anyone can build a website. Anyone can create content. Anyone can create social media content. So that gives everybody in the world access to do these things and bring their ideas to life. So it's really the idea, the fundamental core of what you decide you want to build, which becomes the differentiating factor, in my opinion, for how you stand out against, all of the noise, because there certainly is a lot of it now, and there's going to be so much more in future. I think eventually we will have AI algorithms like filtering out more of that noise. So like you may have your own personal algorithm sorting out your Twitter or your Facebook feed. So you only kind of see the stuff that like is actually relevant or you actually care about, and you won't rely on the platform to do that themselves. We've seen this with websites and with blog content. It's just so much AI content out there now that how do you differentiate it? Turns out there is actually people still creating very good content. They're putting a lot of effort into it. Maybe some of them are even using AI to kind of augment themselves and to write the information, but it's like the research and the planning and the idea and the creative part that is helping them to stand out from everyone else. And honestly, those people had been standing out from everyone else for a long time, because that type of content has always won. I'm not too worried about it. Of course, there could be some day when AI just comes and takes over the world and everyone is out of a job. I don't know. Maybe it will happen. Maybe it won't. I'm not too down on humanity just yet. But what I do know is that when there's so much disruption as we're seeing right now, there's so much opportunity because we've seen it, businesses are being wiped out left and center. So if you're able to stay even a little bit ahead of the curve on this, there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, that's a great message to end here, Mark. You learn these skills, you learn how to use the tools, but it's ultimately the person behind the tool. And it's not necessarily, don't think of it necessarily as a shortcut, like you're going to be able to just flip a switch and you're going to get a ton of links. Like you said, like you got to be willing to put the work in, roll your hands up if you do want to truly differentiate yourself, is the message that I hear from you. I appreciate that. Mark, where can people find you? Where can people find Authority Hacker if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, so we have a now weekly podcast over at youtube.com/authorityhacker. So we do weekly podcasts. We share a ton of actionable things that we've built using AI and, troubleshoot along the way and just what's working, latest models to use, all sorts of stuff like that. But from a very non-hypey perspective. So if you're a business owner that feels like they're struggling to keep up with this stuff, then check out our podcast for sure. We also have an email list where we, again, share some latest tactics and sometimes videos on things we're working on that other people can build. So you can check that out. I think it's authorityhacker.com/subscribe. Yeah, those are the best places. Hope to see you there.
Yeah. And I will share all this stuff, links to all this stuff we talked about in the show notes. So no worries there. Again, big thank you to Mark and all the great work you're doing over there at Authority Hacker. A big thank you to the listeners. A reminder, like, subscribe. Again, the more you do that, share this stuff with your comments, with your colleagues, the more I can have great guests on like Mark. Last thing I want to say is just, if you have any questions for Mark about any of this stuff, please leave it in the comments. I'll comment on LinkedIn posts, YouTube, Spotify. I'm sure Mark will be more than happy to expand on some of these topics or questions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thanks again to Mark. Thanks again to you listeners and watchers. Have a great day.